It's VE Day today, and there seems to be a really strange misdirection happening, both in celebrating and celebrating inappropriately whilst thousands of people are dying in our own country because of mismanagement by the government, and I don't want to be part of that. And I'm going to sing this song that I wrote for my grandpa, who fought in World War One and was in the Home Guard in World War Two because he was too old to fight by then. And it came out of a conversation I had with my mum years and years ago. I kind of, as a young person struggling to come to terms with why we would fighting globally and war and poverty and all of the injustices that we see today. And I couldn't understand how my grandpa could support World War Two, having lived through, in the trenches, lived through World War One. And she herself had taken some time to come to terms with that as well. And her understanding was that he couldn't believe it had all been in vain. He couldn't believe that we didn't need to do it because otherwise the loss had been too great. It would be completely unbearable, and it was unbearable enough as it was. And I think it's really hard for anyone who's lived through a war in any capacity to understand the size of the loss and the size of the pain and all the things that could be done to avoid it. So it's one of the reasons why I work for peace when it's not a time of war, and it's one of the reasons I work to save the welfare state when we're not in a time of pandemic crisis. And I hope that we can work to pull the NHS back from the horrendous privatisation and profiteering that we're seeing just now. So this is for my grandpa. It's called Victory. I met a young man, I heard him cry. He cried for victory before he died. I met an old man, I heard him cry. He cried for victory, but he survived, and he'd never cry for victory in all the years since past, lest we forget for those that died. There's no war cry but loss, lest we forget for those survived. There's no war cry but loss. I met a young man, I asked him why should some deserve to live and some to die. I met an old man, I asked him how could killing right another killing, what could be the prize. Neither voice could answer me, and both did shed a tear. For all the people lost to them, the purpose seemed unclear. For all the laughter lost to them, the purpose seemed unclear. I met a young man, and he was lost. The dream that he had fought for turned to dust. I met an old man, and he was in pain, hoping that this sacrifice had not been made in vain. Lies victory a broken word? A war cannot be won, for some are dead and some are gone, and none will be the same again, and none will be the same again. I met a young man, I heard him cry. He cried for victory before he died. I met an old man, I heard him cry. He cried for victory, but he survived. He'd never cry for victory in all the years since past, lest we forget for those that died. There's no war cry but loss, lest we forget for those survived. There's no war cry but loss.